Iwona. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, Iwona.
Hello.
Hello. Nice
Hi.
to
That
see
was actually correct.
you. Perfect. Okay, stage is yours.
Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen. So give me just 1 second.
Yeah, we can see that.
Perfect. Okay. I guess I can. Okay. So thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. And it's been a great meetup so far. So my name is Iwona. I'm an Agile Delivery Consultant. I am also associated with Agnostic Agile. And apart from that, I work for Automation Logic, which actually last week won the Excellence Awards. So we are the best DevOps consulting firm, which obviously we're very proud of. So what I do, I work as an Agile Delivery Consultant, and I lead Agile and DevOps transformation programs in the public and private sectors here in London. And what I need to say, I think before I start, that this is just, I'm gonna share with you all of the tips and tricks, which is just based on my observations and my experience. But obviously, I think you just need to judge it and see if this is something that could work in your context and your environment. Also, please do ask questions, or you can just, interrupt or ask questions later on after this talk as well. Okay, so I'm gonna start with just a very kind of brief recap of what is actually Agile Delivery, and I have already had a lot of good things. So for me, Agile Delivery, when people talk about this, as we all know, is just alternative way of delivering software. Not only. It can be applied to anything you deliver. It can be definitely a project, product or service. It can be also a business process or actually anything that you want to make better. And definitely the approach allows you to get user feedback much faster and also respond faster to the user needs that we've heard a lot about today, and also respond to that changing priorities. And especially now during the pandemic time, it's also very important to be adaptive and to see what works, what doesn't, and to adjust to that situation. And also it includes agile design, development, and deployment. Obviously, if you work within the wider agile transformation program, then other functions within your organizations might be involved as well. And here I'm going to talk specifically also about digital services. So in terms of services, when we talk about them, I'm sure you can give me a lot of examples when you had, this really good experience when you use a product or service, and on the other hand, when you just really hated it. And it can be anything, like what you do online, face-to-face as well, when you make an online purchase, when you interact with, any service providers, or when you apply for a driving license or settled status. By the way, settled status is for EU nationals who need to apply for it when we leave the EU. Also driving license, and just before this talk, I was talking to one of my colleagues that he said when he was doing that, the experience was just amazing. He just do it on his mobile, and that took literally just 10 minutes. So as you can see, sometimes we can have really great experience, and sometimes it is really bad. Very often I feel like I'm not gonna do that again because I just don't want to be disappointed. So in order to avoid that, what we need to do, we need to understand our users, and that's something that we cannot underestimate. We need to have a deep understanding of the users. I'm not sure if you've been involved in any type of user research before, but it's really about understanding what these people need to do. Users, I mean, in terms of customers who buy or use our services or products, but also users, for example, internal users within our organizations that consume the processes, that consume the services that we might be building for them. And apart from that, we need to understand what are their problems, what they are struggling with. And that's actually that meaty part, which is very crucial, because in order to help them, we need to understand what are these challenge areas and what are also opportunities for improvement. And looking at this from, you know, the end-to-end perspective, holistically, I think that's something that is crucial, because we can't look at different things in a siloed way. So for example, when we do something within IT and development, we need to look at the whole value stream, as has been already mentioned before. We need to see how that value flows and optimize the whole system rather than just one specific component. So the reason why this is so important, especially for Agile delivery, is definitely because we want to deliver value. I think that's our main priority, to deliver value and also meet our users' expectations and also improve their experience. So in terms of ways of working and the way how things are being done, we also want to move from that transactional leadership to transformational leadership, with human interaction at the heart of everything we do. And here again, no matter what we do or who is that user, if this is the end user or just user as, you know, employee, we want to ensure that it's something that we always consider people, because people are key to any successful delivery. Okay, and there are definitely two very important questions, and this is again, I think, what Agile delivery is about. The first one is, how do you know that what you're doing today is important to your user? And then how do you ensure that what your user or what you're doing is still what the user still needs? And that's very important, because as I've heard, it's like, you can't ensure that in 5 months' time the users will still need the same thing. And that's, unfortunately, it might be disappointing, but it's also about demonstrating business agility. And also, I think from the user perspective, is keeping in touch with the users so that we can really be on top of that and really know how for example, the user journey has changed, what has impacted their decisions, and why they have changed their minds. And in order to do that, I think the good way is definitely to start with creating problem statements. We can't improve user experience or deliver value to them if we don't understand what problem we're trying to fix. Then we obviously need to prioritize all of the user needs, make sure that we can really start with the hardest thing to solve, and then do ongoing user research. And obviously focusing on that minimum effort, what it takes in order to deliver value, but also something that would bring maximum impact. And the last thing is definitely sharing this across the teams you work with, sharing your findings, sharing what you've learned, and discussing this, doing, you know, brainstorming sessions so that it can be shared across your organization, and so that you also don't work like, you know, in a hidden place, but it's something that we all should have a really good understanding. This is just a quote that I really like, and that's something that I also need to recall sometimes when I try to solutionize, and very often, especially you know, in that kind of very kind of DevOps environment or just technical environments, we do like things, we like starting with development. But I think what's important is definitely spending more time on thinking about that problem and thinking about, okay, so how might we solve our users' problems is key, rather than just start developing a thing that wouldn't work in a couple of months' time. Okay, so for Agile service delivery, I think, again, we need to look at the whole system. And for me, I can see 3 different systems that are very important to consider. And these are people, process, and technology. I think we can't, you know, change this agile ways of working if we don't look at the people side, or also deliver something to the users if we don't have modernized systems. We can't do, for example, continuous delivery, release valuable software to the users if our technology doesn't enable us to do so. And in the middle, we have the goal. And what it means is that I think user needs should be that goal, user business needs. Hopefully we can find the balance, which sometimes might be quite tricky. So in essence, people is, again, everything. This might be users and employees within our organizations. This is also agile mindset, the culture change, and also people skills. Very often people need to learn new skills. And again, I'm going to refer to my environment in DevOps. Sometimes I can remember one story when I was working with one of my teams. One of the engineers, his wife just gave birth. And when he came back to work, everything has been changed because they moved into cloud. And that was something that it completely impacted his way of working. He had to learn how to automate, processes, how to use or build CI/CD pipeline, and that was something that is completely changing people's life. Then process. I think this is very broad term, but just for the purpose of this talk, I would like to focus on the governance principles, and actually the whole thing around governance, which is so interesting when we try to work in an agile way on the team level, and then we are just trying to work out the way how we can work with the senior stakeholders. Then technology, as I said, so this is the technical capability, how we can deliver things and what technology we should be using, including all of the tools and other systems. And then goal. And in my perspective, agile transformation should not be the goal in itself. It's always the means to get somewhere, or the way how we can do things, how we can deliver things. But definitely it shouldn't be just a goal in the essence. Okay, and agile delivery, as you can see, this brings also a lot of other disciplines. It's not just using agile methods and agile frameworks. As we said, it's definitely collaborating across your business. So it involves a lot of other disciplines, also involving the rest of the teams within your organization, other departments, depending how small or big your company is. But it's definitely about bringing everything together and creating that joined up experience for our users. People are key for any agile delivery, and I think this is what, as an agile coach, I like looking at, okay, so how I can make connection with people on my team and also the stakeholders I work with. And when we talk about agile mindset, that's something that I think most of us can think about. Okay, so there is team collaboration or cross-team collaboration as well. Then embracing change. We know that change will happen, so we need to anticipate and be ready and adapt to it. Then obviously transparency. Okay, how can we ensure that we are transparent as a team, but also we might expect some transparency from our stakeholders and the leadership team. So how can we ensure that it works both ways, that we know what's happening in the business, and on the same time what is, for example, the progress of the work we're doing, because the stakeholders love hearing about things. Where we are, is it done? And obviously it doesn't mean that we need to commit to the deadlines, but we can definitely communicate in a transparent way what we're doing and how we're doing it. Then prioritizing and also ensuring that there is clarity of priorities. And here I need to tell you my story. Unfortunately, it's not good practice. It's definitely something just to learn from. One of my projects, actually quite recent projects, I was working on with my team. The objective was just to deliver like a data analytics platform. It wasn't complicated. It was in the cloud. Everything was fine. And I think, as most of the delivery teams, we just we had the specification document and we started building a prototype. So we went away, it took like a couple of weeks, and then we came back and we shared that prototype with the users and the senior stakeholders. And what the users said is that, oh, that's not what we wanted. So it was really disappointing, and I was just trying to understand why this misunderstanding had happened. Where is that, you know, hasn't this been communicated before? In the end, what we did, just to save this this prototype and this project, we had to take a step back, start with proper user research so that we could talk to the users using that platform, the future platform that didn't exist at that time, and to see what is a, you know, current journey, what do they do with it, how do they do it now, and how would they be doing it when that platform is in place. And we had to understand the user needs so that we could retrofit that prototype later on. So we did that, and I think if we continue that, it would be wasted time. So that's definitely not a good way of doing this, when you need to take a step back and go to that initial phase, you know, discovery, and find out what really your users need. And very often it's just, even though we might have an idea what they need or what they want, is not necessarily what they need. Then obviously delivering frequently, so that we can take that iterative approach, deliver often, get the user feedback, and then also experiment with different options so that we don't limit ourselves when we don't know what the solution might be. And obviously if it's done in that learning environment, when we can fail fast and learn, this is really amazing. And also sharing this increases team collaboration and also organizational learning. When we talk about learning experience, there is, I find this concept really helpful when I try to understand, okay, how we can spread that knowledge, make sure that also other team members understand the things, or they understand how other parts of that value stream works. There is a very interesting function which talks that everyone's behavior equals personality and the environment we work in. So what it means is that we behave differently depending on the environment. And sometimes that, for example, when we talk about learning, sometimes it is something that our organization supports, sometimes not. But we need to understand how we can make sure that we can share it. And it's not just really developing ourselves as individuals, but also as the whole team, and then ultimately as the whole organization. Be agnostic. Here, I think just very briefly, the way how I approach this is that I wouldn't recommend starting with a tool or process. When I join a new team, I just like really get to know people a little bit better, see the way how they have been working, see what I can do for them. And that's really key. And then obviously applying agile values and principles just to boost that communication, collaboration, transparency. I think this is key. When you start working with a new team and you start with, you know, that process, it becomes like really artificial, just, you know, process, like mechanics. This is the way how we do it. So definitely applying values and principles is key. And then I think example, instead of doing it in that mechanical way, you can do it even ad hoc when you see something is not working or something we can do better. Having that time when we can all retrospectively see how things have been done and how we can improve is really important. One size does not fit all. So that's the idea, when I think we need to be, I think, very clever about the way how we can tailor that agility to the context of our team, of our organizations we work with. And then purposely, I didn't want to put any names of the frameworks or methods. because it doesn't really matter. Obviously, it depends on your experience, what you feel comfortable with as Agile practitioners. But I think selecting these techniques or these things that really work well now, because I'm sure that every team can do something very well, and then adding things that you think might be useful. And no matter if this is like, if we try to implement Scrum in 100%, it doesn't matter also if we mix it with another Agile or even lean method. So I think that is definitely the approach that I try to take, and also I encourage everyone, even in my team, okay, we don't need to stick to that. It's really about what works for us, what we think would bring the most value. And then deconstructing the language. I've noticed that many people just use all of these Agile buzzwords, and unfortunately it can bring a lot of confusion. So deconstructing the language is really important when you, for example, talk about servant leadership, to really explain what you mean by being a servant leader. And especially when you talk about this to senior stakeholders, they might have a different interpretation of these words. So that's why it's really important to get a shared understanding, common language of what we're doing. When it comes to all of, you know, this agile terms and phrases, but also when it comes to, for example, defining the work you're doing. Another example I can give you from yesterday, actually. I just joined a new project, so I've got a lot of examples to give you. But now again, we're building another platform, and there is a confusion between, okay, so what does actually data mean and what does information mean? What's the difference? So it's really about agreeing the definitions that everyone is happy with, so that we can consolidate and have that common language. Another example is self-organizing team, which is important to understand what it really means. And I just observed that very often it's misinterpreted when people are referring to this and hoping that the team can do miracles because we are self-organizing. So it's really about understanding, okay, so this is what is within our influence, what we can change within the team, the way also how we work, so we can define our processes ourselves, but also we can define and design that context within the whole organization, and how, for example, our team vision and mission is linked to the organizational goals, which is very important. So we really need to have that shared understanding of the things we're doing. Success stories and failures, and that's extremely important when you work with the team. And it's very often we tend to forget about celebrating successes at the end of the sprint, and later on when we really deliver something, spend enough time on it. It's really valuable to appreciate everyone's effort and help, and even if it's a failure, learn from that, because you can even learn more when you actually fail, unfortunately. And again, just to give you an example, you can see there is a fail wall. With one of my teams, we did something which was wall of shame. And that's you need to be very careful when you try to design ways of working. But if your team is mature enough, and you know, if you want to make some fun, you can do things that normally wouldn't work in another team. But our wall of shame was something that we could have a little bit of fun. If someone was late for the stand-up, we just put someone's name, and that was just a good way of having also that team spirit and building relationships, even though it was quite negative in a way when I look at this from the time perspective. And here very briefly about technology. Why is that important? I think when you try to deliver an agile transformation, or when you do an agile delivery, you can't also be agile without technology enable you to do that. So that's why we talk about continuous integration, testing, deployment, so that we can release that value frequently to our users, and also monitoring all of the services if everything's fine and the users are happy and there are no major incidents. and then getting feedback and doing that feedback loop, seeing what works, what doesn't, how we can improve, and also getting feedback from the users, which is crucial. So trying to ensure that you continuously also improve the technology side of your initiative, because without it, you can't actually deliver value quickly enough. And especially when you work in a highly regulated environment, in large organizations, they do have a lot of legacy systems, and it's really hard to modernize anything because you would need to just build it from scratch. There's so many dependencies, pros and cons that you need to rationalize and make decisions. So overall, I think definitely the agile delivery for me would be balancing all of the user needs with business goals, as well as also seeing what is actually that technical capability and what is feasible. And perhaps there might be some decisions that we would make that, okay, we're not ready for that yet. So as an example, I can give you, this is from actually the UK government. And again, you need to make your own judgment. If you work in a smaller organization, I think ways of working would be the right artifact when you try to agree, okay, how you build things, how you develop things. And for example, having like a agreed list of things, or like a standard, in that case it's technology code of practice, will help you teams and your organizations deliver things. And as an example, they talk, for example, about making things accessible so that everyone can access systems and technology people are using, then being open and using open source. So imagine that, for example, in the UK government, there is the standard that says that it's good practice to publish your code, obviously within the reason so that it's secure. But this is to ensure that not just people learn within one organization, but across the whole government. And this increases that learning experience, and also they allow to reuse that code so that it's not just, you know, this is what we built, but it can be shared across the government. Make use of open standards so that technology talks to the other system or technology you're using, which is really important, or using cloud. These are just, you know, different things that you as an organization or team want to define for yourself to make sure that you work in a consistent way is really good. And then very briefly about the process. So I think governance is something that is really, it might be a bit controversial even when you have really difficult conversations with your senior stakeholders. Governance in essence is just the element of what we're trying to do and how we're going to deliver business outcomes. So for example, how the projects, products or services are built, and then how they might be controlled, managed, assessed. And in other words, I think it requires a lot of time, but ultimately, I believe the whole organization should move towards that agile governance, when you can work out the way with other teams how to manage these projects. So in order to do that, you still need to apply that agile and lean principles to that process of governance. So for example, decide when that waste is acceptable and when waste is not acceptable, because we have different approaches, and when it really makes sense and when it doesn't. And sometimes, very often, we do prefer to spend time as well as money just to learn if that solution would work or not, so that we don't spend much more at the end of the day. And again, this is another example how we can apply agile principles to that governance process, which is don't slow down delivery, decisions when they are needed at the right level, do it with the right people so that we can ensure that the right conversations happen with the right people in the right time. My favorite one is go see for yourself. So this is the lean principle that talks about, okay, if you want to know what the progress is, just go and talk to the team. And very often senior stakeholders don't even want to talk to the teams directly. They just want to be given that information, but actually making effort and engaging with other people I think it's the best way to do that. And again, when we talk about the users, it can be, instead of like trying to think about the solution, go and talk to the users, and I'm sure that you're gonna get more insight. So in order to become more effective when you want to deliver something in an agile way, I believe is aligning all of these capabilities and all of these systems, people, process, technology, and accelerating that process execution so that we can really deliver and then get faster, because we won't get fast straight away. And also thinking about that agile delivery from the wider perspective of what needs to be done. And it's not just agile way of working, but it's all of the other disciplines that we need to involve and include when we create something new. So that was me. Thank you very much. And I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Iwona. And I can see from the chat that there have been a few